Hello people, so we start off the chapter with Orlumbus. Turns out he has a crewmate named Columbus, just because, the pun wasn't clear enough, I guess. Manga Stream translated the person's name as Corlumbus, and he's getting violent. I'm assuming he's a guy, by the way. But apparently, yeah, he got upset and beat up one of the janitors because there was some dust on deck. I found it interesting that in this chapter, Oda pretty much 100% admits to One Piece being too long because we get little recap panels, and we saw this. We saw this in the last chapter with Stelly. He had to give us a reminder. Stelly was part of the Sabo flashback, and in this chapter we get like little mini recaps, and it's like, I'm just doing this for the people that may not remember who these characters were or what important role they played in the story, which to me is kind of offensive. It's like, yes, I remember Alabasta, Oda. I remember Drum Island. I mean, I understand why he does it. I think primarily it's due to his younger readership, or, people that are just casual One Piece fans that just pick up the magazine, and maybe they started reading One Piece ever since it started being published in Shonen Jump, but haven't gone back to reread the series. So I understand the intention behind it. I just think it's kind of like in your face, just like, in case you forgot. And I find it funny that he gives us these recaps that nobody asked for, and then by the end, we get this panel, this closing page of mystery and this major secret, and he gives us no information. So the stuff that we should already know, he repeats, and the stuff that we really want to know, he keeps on teasing. That being said, the art for the architecture of this chapter is just amazing. That scene where the gondolas hit the top and they start walking up the staircase. You see the attention to detail by Oda's assistants. You got statues on each side. The architecture is obviously very French-like. The main castle in the land of Mariejois, or Mariejois, whatever you want to call it, is obviously French. I mean, you got French inspiration all over this thing. The climate, I wanna just very briefly mention the type of weather in the Holy Land. It's very misty, very cloudy because it's so high up, right? I'm assuming Fukaboshi has observation hockey at this point, because the moment he steps onto the travelator, he's like, oh, I got a bad feeling about this. Let's just, get off this platform, this moving platform. So they go off and explore the forest a little bit with the rest of the fishermen and Shirahoshi, and then Stelly, we clearly see that he's just enjoying the travelator, because as it turns out, it actually works thanks to slave labor. And I noticed that the guard who's giving the slaves orders is actually wearing like a Nazi coat. We get to see Carlos again, Mr. Punchable Face himself, and he's eyeing Shirahoshi. In fact, everybody has been eyeing Shirahoshi ever since she arrived. So the Tenryuubito, aka the Celestial Dragons, haven't gotten there yet. It seems like the royal families are gathering in like this plaza. And I have to say, like, in addition to the Tenryuubito, to the Celestial Dragons, some of these royals, man, have designs that are just flat out hideous, just horrendous. I mean, they look so ugly, and in fact, they are so ugly that I think it kind of blurs the line between some of the royals and the Tenryuubito, to the point where at first I actually confused some of these royals with being Tenryuubito, but the Celestial Dragons aren't there yet. The Celestial Dragons wear these outfits, okay? So that's not them yet. They haven't arrived there yet. I don't know if they'll be showing up at all. The revolutionaries that's what they're targeting, the Celestial Dragons, not the royal families. Some of the royals are actually propositioning Shirahoshi, and she turns them down because she doesn't know how to lie. She's very honest. She's like, none of you guys are my type. But here's the thing, right? If the request had come from a Celestial Dragon, like if a Celestial Dragon like Carlos had said, I want you to be my wife, there is no way Shirahoshi would have been able to turn that request down. Like if Shirahoshi had said, you're not my type, to a Celestial Dragon, she probably would have gotten arrested. The only reason she was able to get away with this and say, you're not my type, and then just kind of like, move away from that situation, and it was actually kind of made to look like a gag, is because, technically speaking, those are royals, and she's a royal as well. So they're kind of like in the same level. But the Tenryubito, it's like, that's a whole nother ballgame. And the only reason for why I don't think that the Celestial Dragons will be able to get their hands on Shirahoshi during this arc is because I think Shirahoshi's storyline has been heavily foreshadowed to tie in with Kaido. Her character has to tie into Wano at some point. Otherwise, there's absolutely no point in Oda having Caribou learn about the fact that Shirahoshi is one of the ancient weapons. Then we got this Luffy fangirl reunion with Vivi, Kadu, Rebecca, Leo, Shirahoshi. You know, they're all very, very, very grateful. Rebecca is still crying, you know, because Luffy saved her. Let me just say this. I love Luffy. You know, he's my favorite character. He's still my favorite character of this series. But the Monkey D. Luffy wanking has reached new heights in this series. Like, you can already tell there's like a clique between these princesses. Never underestimate the power of a group of fangirls. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of this arc, these kingdoms, the fangirl kingdoms, decide to cut all ties with the world government and say, you know, we're not going to be part of this organization anymore because you obviously have a problem with Luffy-sama, so we won't be part of your structure anymore. Anyway, Sai shows up and he's talking to Leo, so there's 2 members of the Straw Hat Grand Fleet at the Reverie. And back in Dressrosa, it was foreshadowed that these characters would eventually cause a major incident that would go down in history. So I don't know if that's, like, you know, the beginning stages of this with Leo and Sai. I doubt it. I think that when the narrator said that, he meant like all of these characters together. Plus, this arc is supposed to be the Revolutionaries' time to shine, so I don't think that Leo and Sai will start that domino effect just yet. But at the very least, you know, once they meet back up with Luffy, they'll probably have some pretty good information to share with him. Then we get reintroduced to the characters of the Drum Island arc pretty much at the same time. We have Wapol there and Cinderella. It's funny because it says that Cinderella is actually like a pun on the fact that, you know, Cinderella married into money, into higher status. So this is kind of like the evil dark version of Cinderella in a way. The ambitious, the more materialistic version of Cinderella. And so Vivi was actually with the Straw Hats when they went to Drum Island, so she knows all about Wapol. She knows what's up, to the point where like Kureha comes in wearing a shirt that is an obvious reference to Chopper's bounty of 100 belly, right? But she also tells her, hey, if I had known that you were a princess back then, I probably would have charged the Straw Hats a lot more money for my services. We also see one of those snow rabbits like in the background, just kind of like acting as like security, like an escort. And then Dalton uses his devil fruit ability to momentarily turn his face into a bison. So it's just a lot of like little references to the Drum Island arc. And it's just, you know, it's very nice to see old faces. And speaking of old, Kureha still has like the secretive youth gag going for her. But I think by far the funniest moment of this chapter is when Oda intentionally draws Wapol's speech bubble beneath another speech bubble, to the point where you get the impression that whatever he's saying, it doesn't matter. Or maybe not, maybe it's incredibly important and he just revealed a major secret and now we don't have the full text. No, but seriously, if you read the text, it says something about him finally getting his revenge or some stupid thing.
Oi, 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 Magellan. It's a little lonely down here. No complaints. Has he arrived?
I feel like if the Celestial Dragons were to send somebody down there to kill Doflamingo because of what he knows, it would probably have to be somebody from ZP0, like somebody from the Cypher Poles. And I actually suspect that if that happens, Doflamingo is probably going to use this opportunity to escape. Now, I know he's talking to Magellan here, and he's talking about Magellan, but you have to remember, Magellan is no longer the main warden of Impel Down. He was demoted. After Luffy escaped with, you know, the other criminals, Magellan stepped down, and now Hannibal is the main warden of Impel Down. And not only is Hannibal more stupid than Magellan, he's also a lot weaker. It could be that Doflamingo manages to escape somehow. And once again, I think this is another one of Oda's reminders where he's kind of using Doflamingo as a way of saying, remember that thing that I set up back in Dressrosa when I had Doflamingo say that he knew about the national treasure of Mariejois? Well, I have to recap that just in case you didn't remember. And not only that, but he's using Doflamingo as his own voice and saying, well, isn't it about time that, you know, I reveal this to you guys, to the world, to the readers? Isn't it about time that you know what the national treasure is? And then we get this ending with the king from Adventure Time. I mean, at the very least, it seems like the character is wearing a crown. It could be a she, could be a queen or a king. We also know that it can't be Vegapunk because Fujitora last chapter was talking about Vegapunk and how he made it seem as if he had traveled a long way just to try to get close to him. So he can't be in Mariejois. Like it wouldn't make a lot of sense if you take into consideration last week's chapter. Also, a question I have is that a very small character or is that a very large Straw Hat? Because I know you can make the conclusion that it's a normal-sized human based off of the bounty posters. They seem like, average size, but what if he printed like really small copies for his very small hands? I'm kidding, it's probably a very large Straw Hat. The place that this character goes into by the end of the chapter appears to be some kind of like a refrigerator room, or at the very least it's a room where it's a very, very low temperature, like things are frozen. So that to me implies that whatever is in this room has to be kept, like has to be maintained, has to be preserved for a long time. So I think the Straw Hat is a relic. I think it has to be an ancient relic, a relic of old, of ancient times. So old, in fact, that I think that's why it has to be kept frozen. If you look at the wall, there's like several openings on it that look like windows, but only the one with the Straw Hat has light coming out of it. So I don't know if it suddenly lit up and the character was like, whoa, like this thing lit up, I have to go check it. And maybe it's some type of a warning. I know this is going to sound very Harry Potter-like, but what if each of those windows is holding like an ancient relic of old times, like dating back to even before the Void Century, like dating back to the Ancient Kingdom, perhaps? I think the fact that the hat is made for somebody who's bigger than average, its large size could be relevant, especially because I remember back in Whole Cake Island, Big Mom was saying that if her alliance with the giants had gone through, she would already be king of the pirates. So there's something about the giantification or the giant size of this item that could potentially be key in terms of understanding why it's so powerful. I mean, Doflamingo is associating this national treasure to power. It's like, this is about power. He says, like, it doesn't last very long, so you might as well just like spill the beans. But whatever the treasure is, it's about power. 100% it's about power. And speaking of Dofi, the Straw Hat historically throughout the series has been associated with the Will of D. It belonged to Roger, he gave it to Shanks. As far as we know, Shanks is not a D, as far as we know. And now Luffy has it. So I guess the question is, like, who did Roger get the Straw Hat from? Because if this is in fact a relic of ancient times, it could also be connected to Joy Boy, because Joy Boy existed, like that's when he was alive during that time. He wrote this apology to the people of Fishman Island because he made this promise and he couldn't keep the promise, so he apologized. But there was also the understanding that whatever the promise was that Joy Boy made, somebody would come in the future to fulfill his promise, and it's super obvious that that person is going to end up being Luffy. So maybe Joy Boy, all right, the Will of D, and the Straw Hat are all connected. They're all intertwined at some level. And just to end with a history lesson here, a very long time ago, there was this kingdom. Very great kingdom, very prosperous, amazing kingdom, lots of good stuff. We do not know the name of the kingdom because Professor Clover, who knew the name, was shot before he could say the name. So we don't know what the name of the kingdom was, but for this video, I'll just call it the Kingdom of D. So the Kingdom of D was a very happy place, but there were other kingdoms that I guess were jealous of the kingdom, so they formed alliances with other nations, other kingdoms, and decided to destroy this Kingdom of D. Eventually, they did. They were successful. The Kingdom of D was utterly destroyed, and then the alliance that was responsible for the downfall of the Kingdom of D eventually became the world government. So what I think is that Joy Boy, okay, made this promise. He could not fulfill the promise because his kingdom, his hometown was destroyed. So I do think that Joy Boy was from the Kingdom of D. He got destroyed as well. He died. He passed away. Couldn't fulfill the promise, but his straw hat remained and now is a relic sitting in one of those windows in Mariejois. And I think the reason for why the people at the top are keeping, or at least trying to keep, the straw hat hidden and confined is because they are and were terrified that the straw hat, that Joy Boy straw hat, or whoever that straw hat belonged to, they were afraid that the straw hat would be passed down. So that's why they're keeping it confined. Unfortunately for them, though, we all know that the straw hat has been handed down, just not the way that they thought it would be. And I think that the second bounty poster beneath Luffy's bounty poster has to belong to Goldie Roger. It's the two men that broke the cycle, that wore that hat, that became Pirate King. That's going to do it for me today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Please like the video if you did, if you appreciated the review. Comment down below with your theories and thoughts about the chapter, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already for more One Piece reviews. Thank you so much. Catch you guys later. Bye.